I ain't got no fancy introduction, so do your thing, homeboy.
No. We're just gonna go right into it, bro. We're just gonna go right into it. We're gonna go right
Oh, all
into,
right.
dog breeding, the meds, all the stuff that me and you enjoy talking about and doing. It's just gonna be like a regular conversation. Two breeders have been doing this for a really long time, giving information free to the world. This episode is sponsored by the Beast of the East Dog Show. Come join us and see some of the best dogs in the country, meet world-renowned breeders. There's going to be working events, 2 ABKC sanctioned shows, and so much more. November 4th, 2023 at 3000 Courthouse Road, Chesterfield, Virginia. Don't miss the event of the year. We'll see you there. So anyway, bro, yeah, man. So I'm so glad that we've been able to do this, man. Like, finally get behind the screen. And like, it's crazy because I know me and you probably take for granted every single day we talk about stuff like this over the phone. But I know breeders all over the world would love to be able to just listen in on our conversations and hear about what me and you talk about just on a day-to-day basis. We take it for granted because it's just common knowledge.
Because we consider it common knowledge, or it's second nature. You know what I mean? Like, hey, when do you worm puppies? Like, every 2 weeks, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Where legitimately they don't know the answer.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it to be rude. It's just like, well, okay, well, every 2 weeks. You know what I mean? It's kind of easy. But like we've talked about, there's just certain things that the better our education level gets, we forget the stuff that we learned in the beginning. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's almost like I enjoy when people ask us questions, because then it's almost like it makes me rethink some of the content that needs to come out. I just think when they ask questions, it almost sometimes gives me a better understanding of things, because sometimes I'm like, oh wait, I didn't think of it like that. Well, what if this happened? Like, or whatever the case may be.
Steel sharpens steel. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to other people, but I can't talk to someone who just started breeding 2 days ago or 2 years ago and ask them, hey, I have a dog with one testicle descended. Hey, do you know any hacks?
Yeah.
Is there a way to make this testicle descend? Yeah, you can use United. I mean,
yeah.
You see what I'm like? Now with this platform, we can help the people that were here where we once were, you know what I mean? And that's how we came together, you and I, you know what I mean? Your education level was there. I enjoyed the conversation. It wasn't just like, oh, another guy calling me. Not to be rude, it's like, bro, I have a really busy life. And it's like, dude, I understand. Listen, just give the dog a shot of this, but why? How much? How often? And I'm just like, bro, it tells you all that in the plums. I gave you the information. Look at the plums. What's the plums? And I'm just like, bro. Now with you, I didn't have to do any of that. And it came easier. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey man, I got a dog with this. All right, cool. We would just use this. You know what I mean?
100%.
I think it was like a digital cyst or something like that. It's like, that's easy. Just give them some, something, you know what I mean? And that's where me and you, we mesh well together, because our education level is comparable. There's things where you know a little bit more, and there's things where I know a little bit more, and we help each other grow. You know what I mean?
100%. And yeah, exactly what you said. Like, that whole analogy of iron sharpens iron and so on and so forth, where, yeah, like it's I guess that's how we kind of came together. So to give everybody a quick origin story of how the Dog Breeding Chronicles came about was the fact that Chris was already doing his own thing. Obviously, I was doing my own thing, and it was like, I guess the powers that be allowed us to have that one interaction, but that's all it took for that mental stimulation to be like, when we spoke on the phone, it was like, wow, like this is really mentally stimulating as far as the conversations that we would engage in. So we went on to become really good friends, and I mean, we both have a really solid knowledge base when it comes to dog breeding. So then the conversation came about, hey, like these conversations that we have over the phone, we can't just keep them to ourselves. Let's jump on a podcast. Let's start, having these conversations behind the camera, so that then, breeders like ourselves, or even newer breeders, whatever the case may be, any breeder can jump on and listen in to some really mentally stimulating conversation when it comes to dog breeding all around, you know. And I think that
Yeah.
pretty much sums it up, right? Like fast forward to now.
Yeah, I mean that's perfect. I mean, like I just got a phone call this morning, and we can, me and you can have a conversation because we've had this conversation before in
Okay.
regards to females who pull. You know,
Oh
when they pull all
yeah.
the blood, and that's a really big thing. I would imagine in like English bulldogs, your world, you know, short,
Oh
thick
yeah.
dogs, they have
French
that problem.
bulldogs.
And like I was telling him, like, hey, you have options. Option one is you can do a surgical because you bypass that pool of blood by going right into the ovaries. You know what I mean? You bypass all that. Um, the other thing is you can pull the blood out. In large animals, they do inseminations of penicillin or Baytrin. You know what I mean? I told him that. I said, look, in large animals, this is what they do.
Yeah.
You can, instead of, if you're scared to use penicillin as an AI, you know, just think of this as, I mean, this is a a genuine conversation that me and you have had.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can use extender with antibiotics. It has gentamicin and penicillin in it. So you can flush her out with that and let it all come back out, and
Yeah.
then do another AI.
I mean, yeah, I did a video on this, and like this was before I knew about it, because I think we actually, yeah, we had this conversation about this particular technique, and it was the
Yeah.
fact of like, so a lot of people know that I did an episode where I did an AI and we like pulled out the blood, but you can actually also, which I'm finding works very, very well, is AI her and then push air in, and it creates it's like siphoning gas, and it
Yeah.
causes the blood to come right back out. You know, you put a cup and that AI rod is sitting in there and just let all that blood drain. And then obviously, yeah, let's AI her with some penicillin, or I like, you just use some extender, whatever the case it may be, try to
Yeah,
get.
with extended with antibiotics. There's extended with and without. So you need the ones
Yeah.
with.
Well, I think across the board, I mean, I think everyone should be really using an extender with an antibiotic. I mean, at least from everyone that I deal with, they always use like an extended with antibiotic. I don't even.
I totally agree, but if you don't have it,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not like a deal breaker. You know what I mean? Because a
Yeah.
lot of times when you call somebody and they ran out, they're like, "Man, I got extended without." Listen, it's extender. Send it. You know what I mean?
That's true. No, that's definitely true. And I actually didn't know the name of that pooling. Like I always thought it was just pooling. But from reading actually one of the books that you held up in the other episode, the series of it, the Blackwells, they actually call it the term is hematometra, which would make sense because a pyometra is
Yeah.
filled uterus, hematometra is a blood filled uterus.
Yeah. So what it is so to give people the understanding,
Yeah.
every four-legged animal has, it doesn't actually have a name, but it's like a speed bump right where the hips are. So
Hmm.
there's like a blockage. It's like a dam that doesn't allow the blood to come out if the angle of the hips is different. So, you know, once you alter that angle of that hip, you know, down, now the water can come out. When it goes up, it blocks it more. So I mean, it's, yeah, every four-legged animal has that little bit of a. That's why sometimes when you do an AI, when you're pushing it in, you lift up just a little bit, you
Yes.
straighten it all the way back out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It just gets rid of that, for lack of a better word, speed bump or hump. I mean, it's in a book. I've read it, and it doesn't actually have an actual name, but and that's what they recommend, that you pick up just a little bit, three to
Yeah.
4 inches, and then it straight
Well,
shot.
that's kind of why I've been becoming a little bit more of an advocate for like TCI, because of a conversation, and I don't even think you realized it, because we were talking, right, and I was showing you when I was doing this TCI. I was like, what did you think, so on and so forth, and you're like, man, like she's got a lot of blood on like her walls, and you was like, yo, maybe we should like flush her, you know what I'm saying? And it made me start saying, you know what, like maybe if I am gonna do an AI, or let me rephrase, if I'm gonna do an insemination instead of a surgical, maybe at least like, hey, use like a TCI or something, or some type of endoscope that allows me to, because there's a vet that's close to me that's what they do. They'll do a visual of the inside of the female before they do the breeding, just to make sure everything looks good. So maybe that's something
Got you.
I'm going to continue to do moving forward. I don't know. That's just a thinking out loud kind of thing.
Well, there's a huge difference between a regular breeding, an AI, transcervical, and a surgical. They're all different.
Yeah.
And what I try to tell people, a surgical might work well for 5 females in a row, but then the 6th female, she might have an auto-inflammatory response that attacks that incision. So anything that's, anytime you cut the body, that's a foreign, it's a foreign body. So the body attacks it. So, you have to account for that, because that can happen. Where a transcervical, you don't cut the body. You're going in, you're putting it right at the base, where the surgical, you're putting it in the ovaries, and a transcervical, you're putting it at the very base. That's the best way.
Well, that was the conversation we were having, right? So actually, let's dig deeper on that one, right? So we were having this conversation because in one of the books it says that when you do a TCI, you're essentially putting it in the same place as where a surgical would be done. And remember that conversation? And it was kind of like.
So what they mean by that is it's in the vault. So
Yeah.
you have to look at the cervix like it's a vault, because once it opens, it can get in. But once it closes 3 days later, nothing can penetrate it. So as long as you get past that vault door, the semen is in the vault. Now, the difference between a transcervical and a surgical is you're in the vault and at the actual locations you want to be at, which is the ovaries. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm gonna put an image of what that looks like. I'm gonna put an image in here so you guys can see. I'm gonna use the image that you sent me, Chris. That was a great example. So you can talk as if it's right there, like right above.
So the thing is a lot of people don't understand that there is a little bit of a difference. But when you're using fresh semen or chilled semen, surgicals, they're a little bit overkill, just a little bit. I'm not saying that they're not warranted.
I agree.
I mean, there's some dogs that you have to do surgicals on, and you have to learn the hard way. 3 heats later, and you're like, man, dang, I should have just done a surgical the very first one. There are some tricky females like that. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But so for me, I just do regular transcervicals or regular AIs. I used to do a lot of surgicals, but I only, for me, I only use surgicals now for frozen semen, because frozen semen only lasts for 18 hours per the book. We don't know exactly. Each dog is different. Yeah. The maximum life expectancy of frozen semen is 18 hours. So, there was an article that I read by Dr. Emmanuel Fontaine that he says that dogs are actually in estrus for 5 days. They're actually breedable for 5 days, but the problem is the vault door closes between 2 and 3. But they're still acceptable. They're still accepting semen. That's where surgicals come into play. Where your numbers are so high, the door is closed, but they're still technically receiving semen. So that's why when you're using frozen, you want the door to be closed so the frozen semen doesn't leak out, for lack of a better understanding.
That makes sense. Yeah, because I mean,
and just so you know, I've done frozen twice, and I had 10 and 12 puppies.
Nice. I mean, the thing is, like, what I've even learned with frozen, because now being able to freeze my own semen on my dogs, I don't have my tanks with me; they're over at the liquid nitrogen place. Is it also depends on, like, there's so many little minor things that people don't realize, even with just like frozen, and that's a whole other thing. But like, even down to the products you use when it comes to freezing, because
absolutely, there's 2 different methods.
Yeah,
the French method, and there's another one where you put the egg yolk. And I've done it. I actually did an experiment with a gentleman who did horse semen, and he was like, he was honest with me. He was like, dude, I've never frozen dog semen, so would you mind bringing the dog 2 days in a row so we could see what would benefit the dog versus cattle? And I was like, yeah, sure. And we did it 2 different ways. I think we did it 2 different ways, and it was one with the egg. Yeah. And then we did another way where he took it, basically, freezing extender. We spun it down, put the extender in it, spun it back down, put the extender back in it, and froze it. And they work 20 times better that way. It's imperative. Then you got pellets, you got straws. I mean, there's so many variables in the frozen semen that people don't take that into consideration.
100%. And actually, I mean, it goes even down to something so minor as, like, with the frozen semen, there's different extenders that you're using, obviously, for centrifuging, for, freezing the semen, so on and so forth. So just like regular extender, like some extenders work better with some dogs than others. One dog may be good on this extender, the other dog may be good on this other extender. So with that being said, like I said, the same thing applies to freezing. So yeah, I just like I said, for me,
I mean, I had the thing about freezing as well, though. Not every dog freezes well.
yeah,
That's another thing. But
exactly.
I had a dog that we froze him. Numbers looked great, but the minute we defrosted, trash.
Yeah.
Never got anything ever pregnant in his life off of
Wow.
frozen semen.
Wow.
So that's another thing. If you're gonna freeze a dog, to keep it around for a longevity, because I have frozen semen that's 20 years old.
Yeah.
They tell you to actually defrost a little bit to make sure that it's still viable. Because if not, you're spending all that money, because you spend like $100 a year storage.
Yeah.
You got to think $100 a year times 20 years. That's $2,000 that I could have kept in my pocket. You know what I mean?
That's true, especially for some semen that you couldn't have used or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I mean, the one that I had out in Cali at Butchko's office, trash, and he's one of the best.
Wow. Well, so back to what we were talking about, right? Because I want to throw that image back up of TCI versus surgical versus AI. So, with doing the TCI, so that's what we had that conversation about, right? That it was a little confusing because it says you're putting it into the same place as a surgical. But now looking at this diagram, right? Because it's right above us. How many inches do you really say that really is when you think about it, as far as from the uterine horns, where a surgical would be, down to bypassing the cervix? You're just at the opening of the uterus.
Bro, I would tell you that shit's only like an inch and a half.
That's what I thought. Like
I've seen them taken out of the body. You know what I mean? I've seen them
Yeah.
taken out of the body. And when we used to do spays at the office, bro, that thing would be like this big. Like you could hold it up. It would be tiny, man. Depending on the size of the dog as well, too, though. Don't get me wrong. So a larger animal has a larger one, and a smaller dog has a smaller one, but they're not that big. I mean, it's not like comparing a fucking limo to a small car. It ain't that big of a difference. I mean, they're not big at all, honestly.
So what would you say to the people? What would you say to the people that only get surgicals because of the fact that that's my chair making noise? What would you say to the people that say only get surgicals just because it's the highest percentage that she'll get pregnant?
That's their belief. And if you feel comfortable, I don't know the difference. When I was in Texas, the difference between a surgical and a transcervical, it was like $80 difference. So I know people who only do surgicals because superstition. Like, I have never missed with a surgical. I'm not going to stand in their way. You know what I mean? Do you? But for me, anytime you put the dog under, you run the risk that it not wake up.
Yep.
So for me, I prefer transcervical or just regular AIs. But it also depends on my progesterone numbers too.
Yes, 100%. 100%.
You know what I mean? And it depends on what type of semen I'm using. Am I using fresh semen? Am I using chilled semen? Or am I using frozen semen? There's a lot of variables. But if I'm just using dog A and dog B in the backyard, I'm just doing regular AIs. That's all I'm doing personally.
I agree.
If I had shipped semen, I wouldn't mind doing transcervicals with chilled semen.
Okay.
Now, if I'm using frozen semen, I'm doing a surgical.
Gotcha.
That's my, I don't know. That's my protocol. That's how we do it here. You know what I mean?
I've never seen anything, and I'd like to say that me and you like to read. I mean, like, look at this book. I've never seen anything in all the books that I've read saying that like a surgical is so much more better than a transcervical. I could be wrong, but I've never seen any any real scientific data saying that a surgical is the best way to go to get a female pregnant. Now,
so there's a few veterinarians that I use in Texas, and they only do surgicals if it is necessary.
Yeah.
Semen quality counts, the progesterone numbers are too high. They don't just let you walk in and say, no, I want a surgical. Why? Your dog doesn't necessarily need one. You know what I mean? I believe that every scenario you have to play it by ear, and then that's how I would tell people. I would try regular AI the first time or transcervical. It all depends on the numbers and the quality of your semen. If you have amazing semen, I wouldn't even worry about it. I've seen dogs what they call a slip tie, where you basically holding him in and she gets pregnant. You know what I'm saying? So if that can happen, I've seen dogs get dogs pregnant through a kennel, through an actual kennel.
Oh man.
If that can happen, we're overthinking it completely. You know what I mean?
Well, I think this is just my speculation, right? So, for particularly in my breed, there's a lot of stud owners who are the ones that are pushing this narrative of surgical, surgical, surgical. You want to breed to my stud, you only can do surgical. That's all. So I feel like a lot of the narratives being pushed from breeders like that. The way
And
I
I
would,
would and I would guess, because I've been at the office and I've seen some top breeders send semen out, and legitimately in this huge box there was 3 cc's.
yeah,
Like, that's it. Like, I understand your dogs, they they produce based off of size. Obviously, a 15-pound dog is not going to give me 15 cc's. I understand that completely.
Mhm.
But don't be greedy and split semen. That I don't see that. I mean, I paid you for a service that day. You should say he's booked for the day.
Yeah.
If you're a masseuse, you can't massage two people at the same time.
The only way, in my opinion, I'm not notorious for splitting semen. I don't really do that. But the only way I could see that working is if the dog is giving a really large amount. I mean, like if the dog is like, because I have seen some dogs that are like in my breed that are, 40, 50 pounds that have thrown 1 billion. I've seen it. It's not common, but I've seen it. So if a dog can throw, I would say anywhere between like 6 to like 1 billion, I would kind of be okay with splitting that because of the fact that you're still going to be within that, 200 to 300 minimum breeding sperm count. But
Well,
regardless,
frozen's only 100 million.
no, I was talking about chilled.
No, I understand that. So I understand what you're saying. I do. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
If a dog spits out 1 million, why can't you split it? Well, one, how do you know you're splitting it evenly? You know what I mean? Because unless you spin it down and now you have a pellet of one, and then you split half and half. I mean, I just think that for me, unless your dog is just absolutely that popular to where he's getting studded out 5 times a day, I
Yeah.
mean, but the other thing is when you're studying a male out that much, you need to do something on your part as a stud owner to make sure that he can produce quality every single day.
100%. Yeah, I agree with that 1000 because it's crazy when you think about it, especially the big name stud owners, we know what it's going for. I've seen stud fees as high as 5, 10, 15, 20,000 and up, so to
Yeah,
charge such a high premium, I mean, on their end, the bare minimum is providing good quality semen. Like that's like
I
no
totally agree with you. I mean, for you, if you charge anything more than $5,000 to stud service, I understand that over time you've become callous to the fact that it's only $5,000. But for the person who's paying you $5,000, it might not just be just $5,000. It might have been, a lot of overtime for him to make $5,000 to be able to pay you that one time for $5,000, and you send him a crap shot of semen. You know what I mean? In his hopes that he can make something that he wanted or make his money back in the investment. I
Yep.
understand that, but to me, it's a disrespect on your end.
Yep.
Like if you're going to send semen, send good quality semen. If not, give the man his money back or make arrangements. Hey, look, I'll give you your money back. If it takes, then you can pay me.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example. Is like I think so. So yet again, perfect example. Like if I was in this situation, say somebody paid 5,000 for a stud fee, I have a stud, he's at 5,000. And I needed to split the semen. What I would do, and yet again, it's also part of not just being this big name breeder, but actually understanding real dog breeding. What I would do is I would take the semen, the collection that I got from the stud dog. If I had to cut it, this is what I would do. I would, go ahead and actually, this is the photometer I was telling you about, bro.
So I would go ahead
Oh.
and yeah, so this gives you the sperm count per ml, right? So I would put the semen in 2 vials, and I would test each vial to make sure that there's at least 2 to 300 million in each vial. And then I would reassure him. I would say, listen, this was your results. I'll show you a video on the microscope, give him a whole semen analysis. And I think like that's the least a stud owner could do if they're charging a super high premium, is give them some kind of reassurance that this is what they're paying for, good quality semen. And that's what I would do. I would cut it, but I would make sure that each vial has enough, and having the proper equipment. I mean, hey, if I'm getting $5,000 stud fee, a microscope and a photometer ain't gonna cost me too much. So, and that's
the other thing is now we're talking about semen and we're splitting it, and that means you're spinning it. People understand that there's a certain level of spinning for each thing. Blood is one, semen is another. Know your numbers, man. 7 and 17. That's what it is for semen. You need to be at 7 minutes and not to exceed 17,000 RPMs. Because once you go too fast, you're starting to kill it because that shit's hitting the wall too fast. You know what I mean?
No, 100%. And that's why, like, it makes more sense now as to why, like, I know for horses, they sell like a cushion it's like a cushion extender just for spinning down the semen so that it doesn't get all banged
damaged.
Yeah, exactly.
Remember, I was telling you that. I said, look, 7 and 17 is where, because you have the one that you can twist and change it. I can see it. And that's why I told you semen is 7 and 17. And I want to tell you blood is 8 and 40. You know what I mean? Yep. That's what we used to use. And I'm not a veterinarian, but that's the ones we used to use the vets on.
I'm a little crazy when it comes to blood. I spin at like 10K, like 10K for 1 minute. Surprisingly though.
Oh, that's good. You can be as high as 40,000.
Okay. I didn't hear what you said then. I thought you said
we would do 8 minutes, or I think it was 8 minutes at 40.
So that's really fast then.
Yeah, I think it was 40. Yeah.
Oh, that's really fast. The fastest, like I said, the one I got is like 10K, which is, like I said, it does pretty decent. But all right, we only got a few minutes left, so let's talk about something really juicy. But we only got 5 minutes to do it. Maybe we'll back on to the next episode. Let's talk about all right, why females don't take. Why won't a female take?
Well,
like
you have
the thought process that goes into, like, someone's asking us, because I get this question all the time. My female's not taking. What can I do? What should I do? What should I try? So on and so forth.
So my first question would be to them is, one, what was her numbers? And don't just tell me one number. Don't expect me to tell you she got pregnant because you bred her at a 12. I need before and afters. A lot of people I had when working at the veterinarian office or even doing our own progesterone, I know you've seen this 1,000 times. Oh, she a 14, she'll be ready tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
That don't mean jack shit. She could be a 14 tomorrow. I mean, me and you, we are personally in a situation right now where it's Friday. I tested a dog yesterday, she was a 7. I tested a dog today, she was a 7. Where it's Friday. The next time I can get semen is Tuesday. So me and you, we talked about this. I'm either effed or I might be really lucky and be able to get shipped semen on Monday. I don't know what to do either.
I will say this though. Say what you're saying. I'm sorry.
2, semen quality.
Yeah.
3, is your dog healthy? A lot of times, we just breeding dogs because she's in heat. Okay, pay attention to her heat cycle. Is it extremely long? Is it, was it extremely short? If it's extremely short, her window of ovulation was probably shorter too, because, the thing is, what people don't understand is heat cycles, all of it meshes together. So if she cycles from the time she starts bleeding to the time she stops bleeding is 3 days, she probably ovulated. Ovulation window is probably only 3 hours. Hypothetically, I'm just giving you an example.
Yeah.
But if she does a normal cycle, which a normal cycle is considered 21 days, she cycles normally, she has a normal cycle. So her ovulation is between 3 to 5 days. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of variables. And my first thing is make sure your female is 100% clear of everything. I can get a worm test, make sure your numbers are right, test all the way through.
Yeah.
Find someone like yourself or myself that does progesterone, and it's not $110 or $150 at the vet's office. Say it's $50, or say, hey, listen, I'll leave the dog with you. Can you test her every other day? until she's ready. And then when you notice she's ovulated, make sure her numbers are doubling. And what I mean by doubling is if you say she hit a 15 like she's supposed to, now per our test, our WANFO, she's ovulating. So if I test her tomorrow and she's a 17, she's not ovulating because she should double. And I don't mean exactly double, like a 15, a 30, a 60. That's not what I mean.
Yeah.
If she's a 15, we should be somewhere between 28 to 32. We should see huge jumps like that. That means she's ovulated. And then you breed. How good is your semen? You see what I'm saying? Did she absorb them? So at 28 days, find someone like yourself who can do sonograms very well and see heartbeats, and stop expecting us to give you a miracle and say, how many puppies at 28 days? Listen, at 28 days, you just want to see a heartbeat, my man.
You know what's crazy too is, and I mean, this is just coming from, I had a woman over in Europe. She taught me how to do ultrasound. And she teaches vets how to do this and stuff. She's actually she created the Association of Ultrasound, and she even said herself, she was like, if anyone tells you they can give you a definitive count, especially when you're talking about the 30 to 35 day mark on ultrasound, they're lying.
Even at 30 days, you can only see one side clearly. The other side, you can't even see that clearly. So at young, you legitimately just want to see heartbeat. But she's pregnant. Now, if she's pregnant and she's absorbed before, now you need to have a different conversation with your vet. Hey, listen, last time, make sure you have a vet that you can have a good conversation with, and it's not going to judge you. Hey, last time she absorbed, what is a course of action that we can do? And, they can probably give you ready-made or I'm just,
Yeah.
And so these are things that there's so many possibilities. What I tell you, everything. This is what I tell people. If you have that did not take, make sure you can at least have an educated guess of why she didn't take. I did the numbers. I can tell you every single one of them that was done and how they were done. The semen, it was good or it was poor, it was great. And how you did the insemination. So then from there, we can do a little bit more test.
100%. And like, that's a whole thing. Like, perfect example is I get people who say, oh, my female absorbed the puppies. Well, how do you know she absorbed the puppies? Did you confirm, or are you just going based off of, well, she looked like she got big, like realistically, like exactly what you just said. It's like, you really kind of got to cross your T's and dot your I's. You got to check your semen, look under the scope. You know what I'm saying? Does it look like 3/4 of it is actually motile? Things like that. Not just kind of guesstimating, oh, well, the semen got here, we threw it in. So you gotta, I agree 100%. And actually, just to go back, because I know people are going to question us on when you mentioned just now, like regimate, for example, right? So they don't get it misconstrued. Definitely, that's something like they would want to talk to their vet about, because that's not something they would want to do if they have no experience, using something.
No. That's why I said, hey, she absorbed her puppies last time. Is there anything that we can do? And the words that you should be able to say to your vet is regimate or Outram, or liquid progesterone. It's actually oral. Give the dog, and just and have the conversation that some vets. I will tell you, this is the one thing that I've learned, and I've been breeding dogs since '96, and large animal vets, they're a lot more forthcoming with information, because they understand that when you're dealing with large animals, that's a livelihood for a farmer. So the same thing with dog breeders. This is a livelihood to where they can survive and take care of their own selves. Dog wise, you might have a full-time job, but everybody wants their dogs, their dogs.
Yeah.
You don't want to come out of your pocket every day for dog food. Dogs should pay for themselves. So if you can have a viable litter, you want to be able to have a litter. So these are the informations that we're giving people to help them for the next step.
100%. And that's what I learned is like,
and that's why I like large animal vets.
Yeah. What I agree 100% with that. And I feel like also what I learned is my experiences with more so the more rural vets, the more country vets versus your inner city vets who have a high overhead, who are, you know, more, it's just more in and out on the go. They're getting way more money from, you know, someone who's just bringing in, like, you know, their cat for little nonsense stuff or whatever. But
Yeah.
actually,
The two
Chris,
questions I asked Bex,
we actually
we have less than 1 minute.
yeah, we have less than 1 minute. So guys, make sure this is going to be a part 2. So make sure on the next episode, we're going to still cover, you know, things as to why you're pregnant, your female might not get pregnant. Appreciate you guys being on. As always, it's a pleasure. We'll see you guys on the next episode. All right, guys.